bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master and enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices, and He is a supreme spiritual master as well. All of you citizens on the surface of the globe who have a relationship with me and are worshipping Him by dint of your occupational duties are bestowing your mercy upon me. Therefore, O my citizens, I thank you. King Prithu is about to conclude his instructions to the people under his kingdom. The rulers in the Vedic days, as we know, were very interested that everyone in their kingdom be protected, including the animals. That is the correct meaning of the word praja. And those in the human space of life be engaged in devotional service to the Lord. So it is being explained over here that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master and enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices. Bhaktaram yajña-bhujām sarva-loka-maheshwaram sudam sarva-bhutanam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the reservoir. He receives all the yajñas or sacrifices. All the yajñas are meant for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this process of yajña, or offering sacrifices to the Supreme Lord, is recommended from the very beginning of creation. Saha yajña praja shrestva puro vacha prajapati. In the Bhagavad Gita it is stated that at the time of creation, the Lord sent forth the demigods and the living entities and said, "Be thou happy by offering this yajña to Vishnu." So, Prithu Maharaj also is reminding these citizens of his kingdom the same point, that they must render devotional service to the Lord. And as explained in the purport, the neophyte is advised to engage in devotional service according to their different capacities in the social and spiritual order. But the point to understand is that the execution of the different orders, the responsibilities of the different orders of social and spiritual life, this is recommended, but this is not the highest. And this was confirmed in the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was visiting the southern states of India, he met Ramananda Roy, who was the governor. And on the banks of the river Godavari, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already heard from Ramananda Roy's associates that this man is not ordinary. So, as soon as they sat down on the banks of the river Godavari, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Roy, quote me something from the scriptures which tells what is the highest purpose of human life. So Ramananda Roy quoted a verse from the Vishnu Purana and said that the highest activity in the human form of life is to engage in one's duties according to the varna and ashrama. As we know, the scriptural, the Vedic process is to divide the society into varna and ashrama. There are 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders, and each of these orders has a specific responsibility. So Ramananda Roy thought the execution of the varnashram, this is the perfection of human life. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he heard this, he said, no, this is not the highest. He rejected this. He said, this is only external. And he challenged Ramananda Roy. He said, if you know something better, let's hear it. So then, Ramananda Roy quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, Yat karoshi yad dasnasi yad jahosi dadasi yat tapasvati kaunti tat kurishamadarpanam. He said, dedicate all of one's offerings to the Lord. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also rejected this. Then, when this was rejected, Ramananda Roy said, the perfection of human life is when one detaches from the material world, when one withdraws from the material world. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also rejected this. And then Ramananda Roy quoted from the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma-bhuta prasanatmana sositi nikanchati. And he said the highest perfection is if one offers everything to Brahman. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also refused this, and he then said, okay, if you know something better, then come up with that. And then Ramananda Roy quoted from the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he said, the highest perfection is to render devotional service to the Supreme Lord without any interpretation or mental speculation and by following the instructions of the great acharyas. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this, he said, yes, this is the perfection. To execute the process of devotional service without any interpretation or mental speculation under the instructions of the great acharyas. So, the point is that the execution of pure devotional service without any interpretation or mental speculation, as per the instructions of the great acharyas, is the highest. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's question to Ramananda Roy was not, what can the living entity do to realize perfection? He wanted the highest. He wanted to know what is the best standard. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejected the varnashram or the first proposal that Ramananda Roy had made because that is external. One may follow the orders of varna and ashrama and dedicate the results to the Lord. But still, in that process, the living entity begins to feel that the Lord is subject to His work. The human being thinks that because I have done this properly for the Lord, I must get something in return. In other words, one thinks that the Lord is subject to His work. So this is not the highest. And Lord Chaitanya rejected offering of fruitive results to the Lord also because he said, just offering the fruitive results to the Lord, that is also not enough. One must have a positive attachment. And therefore, he also rejected the third proposal, that is withdrawing from the material world. Because just withdrawing from the material world is also not enough. That withdrawal must result in some positive attachment. He rejected the fourth proposal, Brahma-bhuta prasanatma, because, he rejected this because in this process, one offers to the Brahman, and the Brahman can also be impersonal. So the highest perfection, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained, is to render devotional service without any speculation or interpretation. Also, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was once asked, what is his order? And he replied, I'm neither a sannyasi, nor a householder, nor a brahmachari. Then what are you? I'm simply a servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. So the point is that a Vaishnava is on a higher platform than one who is following the varna and ashrama. The devotees of this Krishna conscious movement, they are Vaishnavas. And what is the Vaishnava's business? The Vaishnava's business is always to be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And if one is always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and the process of devotional service, then one doesn't identify with this material body. then one is actually realizing that since the Lord is the master and enjoyer of everything, it is natural that these senses also be constantly employed in thinking about Him. So, the Vaishnava is defined as one whose mind is absorbed in thinking of Krishna, who's thinking how can Krishna be served. Just like very often the example Prabhupada used to give, that if a glass is full with milk and you pour something on the top, it will automatically just pour out. Similarly, if the senses and the mind are absorbed in thinking of Krishna and in serving Krishna, then even if these different material desires come, they will automatically bounce back, because the senses are employed in thinking about the Lord. So instead of realizing and admitting that the personality of Godhead is the master and enjoyer of all the results, the living entity is thinking that we are the enjoyers and masters of everything. And now we are getting everything from the Lord. We are using all the gifts that the Lord is giving us just to insult the Lord. For example, all these material facilities that are being given, the human brain, intelligence, this beautiful body, it is all coming from the Supreme Lord. But what are we utilizing all this for? We are utilizing all this for living a life like that of the animals and challenging God's existence. We are always saying God is dead, God is blind, God is not watching all our sinful activities. We're just trying to contradict the laws of the Lord. We are thinking that we have achieved so much, now we don't have to depend upon God. Prabhupada used to give a very nice example in this connection. He used to relate the story of the mouse and the yogi. There was a yogi, and the mouse went to him, and the mouse said, Sir, that cat is always chasing me around, and she's making it very difficult for me to survive. So can I become a cat? And the yogi said, yes, become a cat. And the mouse became a cat. And then the cat went to the yogi again and said, now I have the dogs who are always troubling me. Can I become a dog, then no one is going to trouble me? So the yogi said, okay, you can become a dog. And he became a dog. And then he came to the yogi again and said, but now I have the tiger always following me around. He wants to eat me. Can I become a tiger? And the yogi said, yes, you can. And he became a tiger. And then when he became a tiger, he just started staring at the yogi. And so the yogi said, so now you want to eat me? And the tiger said, yes. So he said, now you become a mouse again. So that is the position of the materialist. So the materialist is thinking that now we have got this education, now we have this medical research, now we have these spacecrafts by which we can go to outer space. Now we don't need God, so God is dead. Just like the mouse. When he became a tiger, he just wanted to eat the very person who made him that tiger. Isn't it? So similarly the materialist. Now that God has given us all these facilities, we are saying we don't need God, we can do away with God. But God is going to destroy every one of us. Material nature is going to destroy us all. How? Material nature has illusioned the living entity into fabricating so many powerful nuclear weapons which are like toys in the hands of the materialist. Because the population is becoming atheistic. The agents of the Supreme Lord have given all these nuclear weapons to the human beings, and by this they will destroy themselves. So the tiger, the human being who is acting like a tiger now, by virtue of these bombs, they're all going to become mice again. It may appear that the leaders of the society are speaking like very educated men, but actually they are just fools, because they are blind to the purpose of human life. They are blind to the understanding that this beautiful situation should be employed for a happy ending. They are instead just deluding the living entity into identifying with the body, increasing the bodily identification. So the difference between the spiritualist and the materialist is, the materialist is identifying with the body and he wants to work to satisfy the body. Whereas the spiritualist, he is absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, and hence he cannot bother to identify with it. To rule over his senses, he must be able to tolerate the dictates of the senses. Then he is called the king. We have to understand that we're just tourists in this material world. Just like our devotees also, when they are pinning up or selling stickers, they're always looking for the tourists. You know, tourists come to Montreal, they want to go back with a souvenir. We have to understand that we are just tourists in this material world. This material world is not our original permanent home. We are just tourists. Just like a tourist. He comes in the morning to Montreal, he stays there for 3 days and then he goes back. So similarly, we are tourists in the material world. We are here just for some time. A tourist may come, just like we see tourists who even go to these poor countries like India, Africa and all. They take a lot of pictures. They want to go back and show to their friends what they saw. And they will even go to the poverty areas. But they do not want to stay in those poverty areas. They want to take back the pictures to show to other people. But they don't want to stay there. So we are just like tourists. We have just come to this material world for some time and we will have to go away. But the tourist who goes to a poor country, he doesn't identify with those poor people. He doesn't want to live like those poor people. So similarly, we are tourists in this material world, but we should not want to identify with the various happenings of this material world. Our identification should just be that we are eternal part and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and hence we are meant to serve Him. So if the human form of life is utilized for sense gratification, as we said yesterday, the living entity is called man. Nunam pramata kuruti vikarma. Pramata means a madman. And what happens? This madman loses the special facility that the human form of body is offering. He loses that. Prabhupada gives the example of this Brahman. There was once a Brahman who was very hungry. And this Brahman was looking for food everywhere and he could not find food anywhere. Then he was told, oh, there is a Mohammedan in this area who has some food in his house. So the Brahman, he was hesitating whether he should go to the to the Muslim's house and beg him for food or not. Because there is an injunction that if a Brahman eats from a Mohammedan's house, then he loses his caste. But the Brahman still insisted, and the Brahman decided no, he's so hungry. So he went to the Mohammedan's house and he begged him for food. And when he ate that food, he found it very unpalatable. So when the Brahman came out, he was repenting. He said, oh, now I have lost my caste, plus I'm still hungry. He's hungry because the food was unpalatable, and he has lost his caste because he has begged from a Mohammedan's house. Similarly, if we utilize this human form of life for sense gratification, we have lost the special privilege that the human form of life offers, and at the same time, we are frustrated. We remain frustrated always, regardless of the position one is in. This is confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj, who says, Yajña-bhujām karmani vidvan mani afakanara karoti atvaparya samamogam vindati phalam. Prahlad Maharaj confirms that the living entity is always frustrated, even though he thinks that his economic plans are going to succeed. Just like sometimes we see, even within this Krishna conscious movement, some of the devotees think that, oh, if they just engage in some business, this or that, they will find some happiness. But actually it just ends up in frustration and unhappiness. So the point is that the living entity can never be happy in the material world. The materialist doesn't have this knowledge. So it is the business of the devotees of this Krishna conscious movement to make them realize by convincing preaching. The thing is that we have to really convince those who are blind about the value of spiritual life. The materialist is convinced that what he is doing is the right thing. And the devotee, he has this impossible task of trying to convince the materialist that engaging in sense gratification is not meant for human life. This sense gratification is available even in lower forms of life. But in this human form of life, one should taste what is known as the highest happiness or the highest bliss, which is the spiritual happiness. A devotee considers himself totally insignificant in all situations. Doesn't matter how qualified one may be. Just like when Prabhupada was coming to America, in his poems he stated that I am totally insignificant. And it is impossible for me to convert these people to Krishna consciousness. But if you desire, you may make me the instrument. So the point is that the devotee, he is just an instrument. If the devotee depends upon the Lord, then a difficult situation can also become easy. What may appear to be impossible can become possible. The Lord is the proprietor of everything, the enjoyer of everything, and the well-wisher of every living entity. And the Vaishnava, because he is just the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord, he is also the well-wisher of every living entity. The Lord is the well-wisher, and the Vaishnava is the well-wisher. But the Vaishnava knows that he can bring happiness to the other human being only if the Lord rises as the sun in the heart, in the other individual's heart. Just like Thakur Bhaktivinoda in a prayer says, when the sun rises in the heart, then the illusion of the living entity goes away. Just like when the sun comes out, then you can see everything. In the night you're walking on the road. If there's no light, you won't be able to see also the cars that are parked on the side. But in the morning when the sun comes out, you can see there are so many cars and whatever the location of the various buildings is. Similarly, when the sun of Krishna is not rising in the heart, then one cannot see, one is blind to the purpose of human life. But if the sun of Krishna rises from the heart in the form of the holy name, then the human being can understand his real position, that is of serving the personality of Godhead. So this sun of Krishna rises within the heart when one takes to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. When one takes to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, the sun of Krishna rises from the heart and it dispels the darkness. And what is the darkness? The darkness is the illusion that these senses belong to me, hence I must work to fulfill these senses. If one takes to the chanting of the holy name, then one can understand that these senses do not belong to myself. And if I falsely identify with this body, I'm just going to continue to remain entrapped in this material world. So this bodily identification with the mind, trying to fulfill the dictates of the mind and the senses, is on the platform of the mode of ignorance and passion. It is not on the platform of the mode of pure goodness under which the Vaishnava is supposed to operate. So, the Vaishnava is one who always is absorbed in thoughts of remembering Krishna, who is always absorbed in remembering the spiritual masters and the Lord's instructions, and who doesn't identify with the body, the senses, and who's able to resist it by virtue of his constant absorption in thoughts of Krishna. So, the materialists, unfortunately, do not know the secret to happiness. They are blind to the fact that this human life is temporary and it can end at any moment. Once Prabhupada had given sannyas to a young boy, a young man. He was 23 years old, not very young. So a reporter walked in to interview Prabhupada and said, "You have given sannyas at such a young age to this man, but the Vedas say that you should only give sannyas to an old man." So Prabhupada said, "What is your definition of old?" And then Prabhupada inquired, "Do you admit that you can die at any moment?" Because the man said, old means one who is about to die. So Prabhupada said, "Do you admit that you can die at any moment?" And he said, "Yes." Prabhupada said, "Can you guarantee me that you will not die before I will die?" He said, "No." So Prabhupada said, "Then you are also old." And he said, "Yes." So the point is that we are all old. It may appear that one is in a body that is 10 years old and one is in a body that is 80 years old. But it doesn't mean that the 10-year-old cannot die before the 80-year-old. So we are all old. Therefore, spiritual life should always be practiced. And as Prahlad Maharaj says, Kamara Achrat Pragyo Dharmam Bhagatamya. This spiritual instruction must be imparted from the age of 5 onwards. Because from the age of 5 onwards, the living being can begin to understand things. And the understanding should begin with spiritual instruction. So the point is that, instead of giving this spiritual instruction from a young age, when the child attains 5, the materialists, from the moment the child is born, they just can't understand what can satisfy the child. For example, in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam, it is described how terrible the position of the child in the mother's womb is. The child in the mother's womb has his chin right next to the belly, and the different worms are attacking the child. And when the mother eats spicy food, that further makes the child more uncomfortable. And then the child begins to kick. And the scientists and the mothers are unable to understand. They think it's very nice, the child is kicking. And when the child comes out, the child is in so much agony. And they think this is very cute. They do not know why the child is crying. And they try their best to satisfy the child. And the point is that they are never really able to understand what is disturbing the child. Similarly, this process continues right till death. The materialist is never really able to understand what is making him unhappy. The real reason what is making him unhappy is forgetfulness of the Lord. It's not these different material factors that are responsible for the unhappiness. Just as one factor, identification with the body which follows from forgetting the Lord. So the materialist is always trying to feel young. If you go to an 80-year-old man and say, "You look young, 50 or 60, he will be most grateful. And a materialist, even if he's 70 or 80 and he's with his wife, he'll try to think that she looks very young. Sometimes they say, "Doesn't she look like 60? Another day beyond 60? Because they want to think that they're young. They do not realize that actually oldness starts from the very time the living entity is born. Because old means anyone who has the opportunity to die. And everyone has the opportunity to die at any age because there is danger at every step. Padam padam yat vipadam natesham. So the spiritualist, convinced about the fact that there can never be any happiness as long as one identifies with his body, engages in absorbs himself in instructions of the Lord and the spiritual master. He absorbs himself in thinking of Krishna, in thinking of Krishna's desire, and with this process he's able to safeguard himself from all material attacks. For example, there's so many different types of prisons in different countries, and one of the worst type of punishment is considered to be when somebody is sent to a prison in a room all alone. They call it solitary confinement. That is, the individual is confided to be all alone for 10 years in a jail. So similarly, those who are sinning, those who are blind to the purpose of human life, they will all have to end up in solitary confinement again. When they go to a jail, they may go to a cell which is like 8 feet or 9 feet by 9 feet. But because of these sinful activities, the living entity has to enter into solitary confinement in the womb of a mother and stay in a cell which is no more than few inches by few inches, all alone. So the Vaishnava's meditation is how to prevent the materialist from entering into solitary confinement. How to prevent the materialist from taking another birth in a cell which is only few inches by few inches. How to make him really happy. And the Vaishnava is able to succeed in his task. He's able to exhibit that he is the well-wisher of everyone by being absorbed in thoughts of how this Krishna consciousness can be spread. Instead of absorbing in thoughts, how can I make myself happy? The Vaishnava is absorbed in thoughts that how can this unfortunate entity become happy also? If Lord Krishna wanted everyone on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the soldiers, could have died, but he didn't want to kill them himself. He wanted Arjuna to take the credit. Similarly, if the Lord wants, he can force everyone to become God conscious. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants his devotees to take the credit. The Lord is so kind that he tries to make the devotee even more famous than himself. Just like on this battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna wanted Arjuna to be the hero. So he instructed Arjuna to kill the warriors. Similarly, the devotees have to kill the illusory habits that the materialists develop, and with this the devotees who do this become the heroes. And again, when Sita was kidnapped by Ravana, the Lord used Hanuman to become even more glorious than himself. For example, Hanuman crossed over the whole Indian Ocean in just one leap. And after he crossed over the Indian Ocean, he threw stones. And those stones in the ocean were able to float by the will of Lord Ramachandra. But still, Hanuman got the credit. Because Hanuman made the effort, because Hanuman threw the stones, and by the will of Lord Ramachandra, those stones were able to float in water, Hanuman became even more glorious than the Lord. The devotees of Lord Ramachandra, they glorify Hanuman even more than Lord Ramachandra. And when Jagai and Madai had attacked Nityananda Prabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to destroy them, kill them. But Nityananda Prabhu stopped the Lord. Thus, Nityananda Prabhu was able to save and enlighten the Jagai and Madai if even though Lord Chaitanya was unable to do it. So the point we're illustrating is that the devotees of the Lord, by the Lord's mercy, they're empowered to become even more famous than the Lord. This is the special rasa of the Lord with his devotees. This is the special benediction. The Lord takes great delight when he sees that the devotees are working to fulfill his instructions, his desires, and then the Lord even makes him more glorious than himself. Similarly, the Vaishnavas of this Krishna conscious movement, we've already explained what is a Vaishnava. Their responsibility is how this Krishna consciousness can be established in every corner of the world. How people can take part in this ISKCON movement. They have missed the opportunity of actually taking part in the original ISKCON movement. Prabhupada used to say that the original ISKCON movement is in the spiritual sky. So they missed the opportunity of serving Krishna by the original ISKCON movement. And now the ISKCON movement has been recreated by the Supreme Lord to give the individuals an opportunity again to engage in service to the Lord. So the Vaishnavas, they want to bring everyone to the platform where some of the process of devotional service can begin. And this should be our absorption. And if that is our absorption, if we are transcendental to the influence of the modes, if we are transcendental to the influence of the mind and the senses, then we are the real rulers of the body. And then, by the mercy of the Lord, one can become a very powerful king who will conquer over all his enemies, namely the senses, and who will be able to deliver other conditions also back to the Lord. Hare Krishna. Any questions? But the Lord is so kind that He makes, when He sees that the devotees are striving very hard for Him, He wants to make him even more famous than Himself. That is the Lord's special mercy towards His devotee. He wants the devotee to be more famous than himself also. It's spiritual, it's not material. It's spiritual because the devotee is absorbed in fulfilling a spiritual mission. Asking questions is a sign of intelligence. Prabhupada used to say how intelligent a man is recognized when he opens his mouth. Was he applying them? Well, if we carefully understand this Lord Chaitanya's, when Krishna appeared on this planet, He did stress the varnashram, Chatur Varna Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhaga Saha. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, He propagated and stressed the Samkirtan movement. So, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed by his example how the highest thing is to be a Vaishnava. So, the execution of the Varna and Ashrama can be there, the responsibility. But it should be understood that that is not the highest. The highest conception is whether one is a grihastha or a sannyasi or a vanaprastha, to just be absorbed in serving Krishna. Now I'm a sannyasi, I must get a maha plate and rest of the time I must just relax. Or I'm a grihastha now, so my main business is just to make money. No. The highest concept is to be absorbed in thoughts of just serving Krishna. Whether it's a grihastha or a sannyasi. Because he's a Vaishnava. The identification with these different ashramas, that is still material. It's not completely pure. You had a question? The question is that he has heard that by preaching the senses can be controlled, but he has difficulty controlling the mind and the senses, and others also. And also there is a discussion that everyone should go out preaching at least once a week. So will that be helpful? So our answer is as follows. If one is preaching means completely absorbed in Krishna, because when you are out preaching, your dependence upon the Lord is much greater than when you're not preaching. For example, when you're out on the street distributing a book or a sticker or a painting, there is no guarantee that the other person is going to take it, isn't it? You can't catch a man and say, hey, you had to take this book. You can't become a bandit and take the money out of his pocket, You're really relying completely upon his mercy. You're throwing yourself at his feet, more or less, by describing the beautiful values of the book, the beautiful value of whatever the paraphernalia may be. And when you're throwing yourself at the mercy of the other individual, actually, you're throwing yourself at the mercy of the Lord. Because in your mind you're thinking, my dear Lord, you're also situated in the other individual in the form of Paramatma. And by becoming dependent upon the Lord, you're automatically also controlling the other senses. You follow? I'm just giving you a different example. Whereas, if one is executing some other duty in the temple, for example, the dependence upon the Lord is still there, but not to the same extent. For example, say someone has the duty of cleaning pots. It's a very mechanical process. Of course, the highest is that even when you're cleaning the pots, you should be thinking of Krishna. But to be successful in that task, you don't have to necessarily pray to Krishna to the same extent, and you have to when you're out in the cold, when you're out in the field. You follow? So the point is that what preaching does, it also forces you to purify yourself, because you know that the results in preaching will be dependent upon our degree of purification. The purer we are, the more effective will be our preaching. Thakur Bhakti Vinod used to say, a Vaishnava is recognized by the number of other Vaishnavas that he has made. Is that clear, Prabhu? Also, when one is engaged in preaching, one can realize that one is engaged in the activity that is the dearmost to the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. The genuine spiritual master takes the greatest pleasure when he sees that his disciples are out convincing the neophytes about the value of spiritual life. You follow? So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Yajña Paramam Gurum, preaching is described as the highest. In the Bhagavatam, in the 6th canto, it is stated, Tasmat Samkritan Vishnu Jagat Mangalam Amhasam, make this world happy by this Samkritan process. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, by my order, go and spread this Krishna consciousness. So in all the Vaishnava scriptures we see, the greatest emphasis is on preaching. And therefore we see that even in the instructions of the other senior Vaishnavas, this preaching activity is stressed again and again. This is all over the movement. So sometimes when some devotee is asked to preach or this is stressed, to him it's just like a knife being stabbed at the back. He feels the pain. Sometimes they may present so many arguments that I get attracted by, the opposite sex. But the real thing is, if one is attracted by opposite sex, seeing the opposite sex outside, that means that one cannot control his senses, and one can think about, and even if one is within the temple, and still be attracted. So the real solution is not to withdraw ourselves to the forest, but the real solution is to become the ruler of our mind and the senses. We all want to become Ishwaras, isn't it? We all want to become controllers. So let us first become controller of the mind and the senses. If you all want the title of kings, then become the ruler of the mind and the senses, then you're a king. So we can call the devotees King Gauranga, King Gauranga. Okay. So if you all have no questions, then I'll ask questions. So, what's the key point of this verse? Who remembers? What is Maharaj Prithu saying? And how does he define the Supreme Lord? I think we should have a closed book examination, not open book. Okay, anyway, go ahead, I'm just joking. Yeah. Yes. He's a master and enjoyer of all. So, in this purport, there is reference to the engagement of the neophyte in the duties of the different social and spiritual orders. Uchit comprende le question en anglais, n'est-ce pas? So there's explanation of the engagement of the neophyte according to the duties of the social and spiritual order. But we have pointed out in our discussion that this is not the highest, it is just for the neophyte. Can somebody say, how did we prove that our statement is right? Yeah. So what's that discussion? What was Lord Chaitanya's first question to Ramananda Roy? So what did, what did Ramananda Roy reply? But why did Lord Chaitanya reject that? What was the last line you said? What was that last line that you said? There's one other defect in this system when one follows the varnashrama. We had stated that. Yeah. Attach shall be free? No. Yes. I think now we are all taking guesses. No. We make the Lord the result of our work. We make the Lord the result of our activity. We think, because I've executed this ritual as a grihastha, now the Lord must give me this in exchange. I said that, you follow? Lord Chaitanya rejected this by saying it is external, because when one executes the varnashram duties, then one expects, okay, now as a sannyasi I've done this ritual, so I must get this in return. You follow? So Lord Chaitanya did not like that. And what's the second, what? It's right there in the TLC. Yes, but Lord Chaitanya's, if you read teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the conversation between Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then you will, so that was our question also. Yes. He comes by gradually, he can take to the varnashram. Our discussion also is to show the highest. It is not rejecting varnashram. It is accepting varnashram in its proper position. But that is because when one executes the occupational duties according to the different varnas and ashrama, then a certain type of expectation comes in the mind, you follow. The expectation is that because I have executed these duties, let's say as a grihastha, then I must get this in return. So Lord Chaitanya, this is there in TLC, I'm just repeating it line by line. Lord Chaitanya rejected this, saying, one of the defects of this is that it makes one thinks that because he's acted in such a way, the Lord has to do this in return. The result of his work. So therefore he said, this is not the highest. You follow? It is not that this is not desirable at all. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, 4 types of pious people surrender unto me. One who's in distress, one who wants wealth, one who's inquisitive. But he said, but the highest is one who does it with love, you follow? So the varnashram is definitely acceptable. But what we are pointing out is the difference between that and the Vaishnavas. That's all. So that's why Lord Chaitanya rejected this. As the Lord Chaitanya's question was not, his question to Ramananda Roy was, what is the highest activity that a human being can engage in? So what was the second reply? And the third? Yeah. Or why was that rejected? What's wrong in withdrawing from? And what did What is the next reply from Ramanda Roy? Yeah. That was also rejected. And which reply did Lord Chaitanya accept? No, but what's that verse from the Bhagavatam? Yeah. What's that without? No, he's pretty close. Yeah. And there's one more point. Yes. Engaging in devotional service without any interpretation or speculation and under the direction of the great acharyas, that is the highest perfection of human life. Well, the Brahman can also be impersonal. Whereas in Yat Karoshi Yad Dashnasi you assume that the Lord is a person. We related that conversation. What is an old man? How does one define old in the spiritual language? So we are all old. So to think that I'm young, yeah. That man's old, yeah. One understands the spiritual identity, but there's also a chance that somebody may misunderstand it and offer it to Brahman. So Lord Chaitanya wanted to take complete precaution. Yeah, that is not. Lord Chaitanya wanted to play completely safe, just like Yat Karoshi Yad Dashnasi. Generally, when you offer everything to the Lord, you also begin the process of devotional service. So, by following this verse, sometimes you can also misuse it to think that the Lord is impersonal. Just like one of the reasons why he rejected the first one was because those who follow this varnashram, at that time there were also a class of people who were believing that the Supreme is impersonal. So he wanted to take complete precaution. Hare Krishna.